Hello everyone, my name is Dewey and welcome to Path of Exile 2 version 0.4, the last of the Druids patch. Welcome to the very first episode of the Exile Survival Guide. This is a tutorial let's play series where in each episode I will teach you something about Path of Exile 2 and all the different systems and mechanics that the game has to offer. If you've been curious about Path of Exile 2 but felt intimidated by its complexity, this series is for you. We're going to take this slow, methodical, and explain everything as we go. This isn't going to be a speedrun or a min-max guide, but it's more of a learning the game together experience, understanding the mechanics, and most importantly, having fun with it. So in this first episode, we're going to cover the absolute basics. We'll create our character, jump into the game, learn the UI, and start our journey through Rayclast. By the end of the episode, you'll understand the fundamentals of movement, combat, skill gems, and get your first look at that intimidating passive skill tree. So let's dive in. Alright, first things first, we need to create our character, but before we pick our class, let me explain something important that you'll see on the character creation screen. Path of Exile has different leagues, and you need to choose one when you create your character. Think of leagues as separate game modes or economies, and here's what you need to know. Standard League, this is the permanent league. Everything you do here stays forever. Your characters, your items, everything persists. It's a good place to learn the game at your own pace without any pressure. The Challenge League, the current one here, is Fate of the Val. These are temporary leagues that usually last 3 to 4 months. They often have special mechanics or features that make the gameplay different. When the league ends, your characters from this league and all of its items is moved over to standard, so you're not losing anything for playing the Challenge League. For this guide series, I'm going to choose standard because it's more beginner friendly and we can take our time learning without worrying about league timers. But if you're following along at home and want to pick the Challenge League, go for it. The core gameplay is the same and you might enjoy the fresh economy and league-specific content. Also, I will be selecting solo self-found. There's an option here, or SSF as we usually call it. I'm going to enable this for this series to simulate what it's like starting with a completely fresh account. So there's no trading, no partying up with other players, just you and what you find. Effectively, this turns Path of Exile 2 into a single player experience. But here's the important part. You don't need to do this. If you're following along at home, I recommend keeping SSF off. That way you can party up with friends, trade items with other players, participate in the game's market economy. SSF is just for people who want a more challenging, isolated experience. For learning the game, having access to trading and multiplayer is actually really helpful. I'm only doing this so I can show you what a pure solo experience is like. Alright, so let's talk classes. Now comes the fun part, choosing our class. Let's take a look at what we've got here. Path of Exile 2 gives us 6 starting classes, actually 7 or 8 now if you include the alternate classes for the Huntress and Sorceress. Here's what you need to understand. Your class choice is not as restrictive as you might think. Unlike traditional ARPGs where each class will have their own skill set and you're locked into those skills, in Path of Exile, skills comes in the forms of items. So any class can use any skills and any weapons. So it doesn't really matter which class you choose. The only thing that really changes between the classes are their ascendancy skill points, which later down the line we'll dive into. It's like a upgraded version of your base class. And the other thing is your stat attributes, you know, how they affect the way that you choose your weapons and armors and stuff like that. But ultimately, if you want to choose a warrior and use spellcasting, you can absolutely do that. Or you could pick a witch and use a bow and arrows. You can do that too. And there are meta endgame builds that will absolutely work with these mix and matches. For this playthrough though, we're going to select the Sorceress because it's a good mix between speed, defense, and offense, and I think will give a beginner's experience the most yeah, friendly experience walking through Rayclast, walking through the campaign for the first time. Let's name ourselves here. And by the way, at this point, you can also select the league that you want to start with here as well. This is going to be Exile Survival Guide. Okay, and we're in. So first things first, we need to select a movement type. Now you can choose mouse or WASD here. I'm going to select WASD because I believe Path of Exile 2 is the first and only ARPG on the market that supports this movement type. And since we're playing a spell casting character class that will need to aim independently from our movement, WASD is the perfect choice for us here, but feel free to use the preferred controller schemes that you want. You can also use a controller as your input as well if that's what you prefer to do, but me being an old gamer myself, I'm gonna stick with mouse and keyboard. Alright, so we'll walk over to the wounded man here.
Glad to see another living soul.
Your leg? What took place here?
The miller went off to warn Clearfell about a strange sickness plaguing our men. I was fixing to go after him until that bloody thing got to me first. Now, all those who drowned in the flooding, suddenly they ain't so dead no more. I would appreciate it if you could...
Alright.
Clearfell. Find the miller.
So that was an unfortunate turn of event for the wounded man. We're gonna go ahead and pick up our first item here, which is a ashen staff. Now you'll see right away that as soon as we pick up the item, a skill is equipped into our inventory. So I think this is a good place to explain how skills work in Path of Exile. Traditionally in other ARPGs, your characters, the skills that come with them is bound to their class and the level that they have leveled up to. In Path of Exile, most, if not actually all of your skills, with the exception of a couple who came from Ascendancy skill points, actually comes from your weapons and items. So if you open the inventory menu here by pressing I, you'll see that my character has an ashen staff equipped as soon as I pick it up. And it says grant skills level 1 firebolt, right? Anytime you see a text that has an underscore like this, we can hover over the text in order to see what the description of the skills or information about that text is. In order for us to do that, we can hold Alt on the keyboard and then hover over the text like this. When holding Alt, you can also click on this pin right here in order to make sure that that pop-up doesn't disappear when we mouse away from the pop-up or the item, right? So now we can see much clearer. You can do the same thing here with the firebolt skill as well. Pin that, and then we can move it around and read it more closely on what it actually does. So it's an AoE projectile spell that does fire damage. It's currently level 1, has 0 mana, and with a cast time of 0.9 seconds. All this other information, how much damage it does, and additional effects if we decide to quality it. And I'll explain quality later once we get into town. So yeah, that's the basic. So you can kind of imagine, right? Because skills come from weapons, any class can use any weapons and effectively can use any skills. Let's move on. Alright, so we see our first couple of enemies here. This is the drowned. If you hover over them, we'll see their health bar. If I attack them, we'll see status effect underneath their health bar. Right now that's a ignite build-up. I'll just kill these guys real quick. And you also see in the game's UI that they have a health bar on top of them once they've been damaged. It would be really nice if we could see some sort of a health bar above us. when we're running around, so that in chaotic situation we don't have to glance to the bottom left of our screen to see our life points and shields, as well as the mana, so on and so forth. So to touch on that really quickly, we can go over to the options settings here. Under interface, we should see, yes, right here, show mini life bar above you under the gameplay section in the interface. You also want to select show life and mana level as well, and show flash buffs. That's personal preferences. You can turn them off if you don't want to, as well as aura icon. I like them because you can always see what's going on with your character at all time. Yeah, we want to see allies and enemies. Perfect. That's, I think, should be all the settings. At the same time, I'm also going to take my time and change some of my input settings here. I'll put a timestamp in the video so you can skip forward if you want to skip this section of the video. But basically, one of the things that I want to change is our inventory. We access them quite often in the game, and I don't have to reach over. I don't want to have to reach over to the I key in order to open it. So I'm going to set this to V. And I believe that unset an action. We don't really care about league interface here. The other thing is creating a portal is by default does not set. So normally you would have to select the portal here in order to open a portal back to town. So let's put that into B. Save and perfect. Alright, so now hitting V, we'll see our inventory. That's just personal preference. You don't have to do that. But yeah, and now as you can see, we have a health bar and a mana bar on top of our character. So at all times, we can keep an eye on our health and mana level without having to divert our eyes from the center of the screen where all the action is. Great, we've come across a large chest and get our first skill gem. So, if you open your inventory at this point, you'll see now you have a skill gem. As I've mentioned before, all of the skills, or the majority of skills in Path of Exile comes from skill gems and items. So, we can go ahead and select the skill gem here and hit G on your keyboard. That should be the default binding to open the skills panel. As you can see here, you have your firebolt, which comes from the Ashen Staff. Now you can equip Spark in any of the available slots here in order to have it enabled on your character. So in order for us to bind a skill into our action bar for us to use it, you can follow the tutorial here by left clicking it and putting it in any position we want, or we could also click on the keyboard on the hotkey or the slot that we want and then select the skills that we want to use. For example, I can select Q to be Spark here, and then now if I hit Q on my keyboard, my character will start casting Spark all over the place. Amazing. So we've reached a checkpoint. Effectively, in Path of Exile 2, some maps are so large that you'll have multiple checkpoints. This acts as a save point for you to return to when you die. Your character will come back to or will be respawned at the latest checkpoint that you've activated. Upon activating a checkpoint, you also refill your entire flask and mana flask, a health flask and mana flask, as well as your life, energy shield, and mana that you currently have. So it's a good way to kind of freshen up your character. The other functionality of a checkpoint is that once you click on them, if you have other checkpoints or waypoints activated on the minimap, you can also teleport directly to them, and we'll use this more later when we get to some of the other larger maps. And another thing you might have seen me do there, which is sprint like this. If you hit space on your keyboard, your character will dodge roll, and if you hit space and then continue holding space, your character will sprint. You can sprint and steer your character using the WSD key or your mouse. So you see my character will follow the mouse here. Now you have to be a little bit careful because while sprinting, if I get hit, for example, my character will get knocked down and be pretty much immobilized for a couple of seconds. Very vulnerable position, right? I can, however, still use my life flask, so that's quite nice. Now we're trying to find our way back into town here, so I'll speed up through this process a little bit. For this playthrough, I am going to try to treat it as a hardcore playthrough and try to die as least as possible. However, I am playing on softcore just so that, you know, if I end up dying, I don't have to restart the entire series just for video continuity purpose. Right, so a little bit about our first boss fight, the Bloated Miller here. You'll see every now and then he'll have a flashing red attack, and you'll hear an air horn in the background. That attack you cannot dodge, you cannot block or parry them, even if your character uses a shield or a buckler. So for those, the only options we have would be to dodge out of the way, just like that. So you just kind of, you see how the air horn sounds went off, and then he raises his hammer, his saw, then a second later it drops down. So the timing is a bit awkward, but just, you know, be patient, take your time, watch the mechanic, don't panic, and most if not all of the skills that the enemies throw at you in Path of Exile can be dodged in this manner. Alright, so let's go ahead and fight him here. Okay, so I'll pause the game for a second. As you can see at the bottom of his health bar, he now has an additional icon. This means that the Miller has been ignited, right? Elemental attacks in Path of Exile has a chance to add an ailment, and this chance is, I won't go too deep into the math behind it, but the bigger the hit, the higher the chance, versus also, of course, take into consideration the ailment status avoidance stat on the enemy as well. But you'll see here, the icon on the right is my ignite buildup. I'm currently at 82%. So every hit this will that I deal to the Bloated Miller, this number will go up. And once it reaches 100%, we'll have an ignite status effect on the Bloated Miller, and he'll take damage over time. And you can kind of see how much damage we've done to him here at the top right. Pause one more time. You saw that he just got stunned and staggered backward a little bit, and you will notice this bar right here recently filled all the way up, and then now it's draining, right? So this is the stun bar basically, or stagger bar if you think about it. Every kind of attack has stun contribution or stun buildup, and stun buildup for physical attack, especially melee physical attack, is a lot higher. So this is also another way to kind of create a crowd control effect on any kind of mobs, but especially bosses, because they're quite dangerous. So for characters like the warriors or the monk, which goes with melee and physical attacks, usually this is a good mechanic to kind of help them in boss fights. Kind of help stun them a little bit, stagger them, make sure they can't throw out abilities, and later down the line we'll also see some abilities that may benefit from this effect and makes it so that we deal more damage to the mobs when they're being stunned, for example. But yeah. We'll clear these guys out. We'll take some health pot. There we go. We managed to take him down.
The mark of corruption. I
pick up our first couple of items, and we have our first passive skill point available to us. So let's go ahead and check this out. Now, it is overwhelming, but do not panic. I'm going to zoom out slowly, and you'll see kind of the magnitude at which you know, the scale and size of this thing. So it is quite overwhelming at first, right? But don't worry too much about it at the moment. I'm going to go through this playthrough without any guide and just sort of find my own build, if you will. I think it's actually quite easy to do it in Path of Exile 2 compared to Path of Exile 1. And I'll go and explain my thought process as I go through the game. I mean, granted, I have some experience, so I sort of know a little bit about what I'm doing. But I'm not like a crazy, you know, build maker or anything like that. Just something that we can use to walk through the campaign together. So the thing we want to focus on is spell damage and energy shield. These first two nodes are what's given to us at the beginning. Don't worry too much about, you know, what's out there at the moment. We just need to worry about these two, right? And one of the things that I noticed through my previous playthrough is that at the beginning of the game, where our items and our skill levels are quite low, the only place where we can get additional damage is coming from is in the passive skill tree. And so the damage increase here at the beginning is actually quite big, right? You kind of imagine 10% increased spell damage, you know, small numbers, but marginally, proportionally is quite large. Compared to later towards the end game, 10% increased spell damage is nothing, right? So for the beginning portion of the game, we're going to try to prioritize spell damage, and effectively it's also kind of a defensive layer, because the Path of Exile community, especially in the softcore leagues, will have a saying, you know, the enemies can't damage you if they're dead. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. All right, and let's go ahead and enter into town. The other thing I want to actually touch on really quickly is that a really good way to sort of visualize the passive skill tree is we have, if you open your character panel, you'll see that we have strength, dexterity, and intelligence, right? These are the three main stats that every character will have. And all of the intelligence or based skills or related things such as mana, spell casting, elemental damage, you'll find them mostly towards the north side of the tree. So these are all the intelligence related nodes. And because we are a sorcerer, you'll see that we started out towards the top as well. So this gives us the closest access to all the things that sorcerers are naturally good at. So if we look at here, if I type in spell on the search bar at the top right, you'll see that there is all of them towards the north side of the tree, whereas the bottom right, bottom, and then left side of the tree, there's nothing. However, this is also true for warriors and other classes. So for example, if I'm interested in armor, to increase my armor, you'll see that towards the warrior side of the tree, this is where all the armor is found, right? Or if I'm interested in projectiles, this is where all of the projectiles is found, because that's where the rangers and the huntress starts. This is where the warrior starts, and the monk, which is a hybrid between dexterity and intelligence, will start right here. And you'll see monks are really good with critical damage, for example. So you'll see all the crit notes are usually like on this side of the tree, right? And there's some on the other side too. It's a bit of a generic stat, but yeah. And if you ever are curious on how do I know what to type in here to search for, a good way to do that is if you open up your skill tree, for example, the skill panel here, you hover over any of the skills, you'll see, as I mentioned before, there are these tags, right? Spell, AoE, projectile, fire. So these are the tags that I can then use to search on the tree. So for example, I'm interested in fire damage. Okay, if you want to do fire damage, these are the nodes that you will likely want to tick, that will likely have to path towards in order to try to do more fire damage. If I'm interested in lightning, because I want to level with, instead of with Fireball, I'm going to level with Spark, for example, right? Spark is clearly lightning projectile. So anything that has lightning or projectile on the passive skill tree will benefit us. And this is how we could find the nodes that we're interested in and try to find the most optimal way to path to them. Right? Path of Exile 2 is more of a puzzles than an action RPG, if I may say so, because you have to balance a lot of things, and solving this the most optimal path to the right nodes that's most beneficial for your character is in itself a puzzle. All right, so we got town. Let's head in.
Here, there is a small...
Renly's the name. You're skilled with the violence, if what you did out there in the riverbanks is any sign. Another refugee from the Count's justice, I take it. Well, have no fear. This place is something of a hideaway for many of us now, and we could sorely use your skills in these dark times. I'll smith for you what I can, if you're willing to bend your violence toward our defense.
Great, so speaking with Renly gives us our second kill skill gem. I'll save it right there.
Power stalking us out in the felling. It moves unseen under the dirt and attacks without warning. We can't leave the walls to find food, and I've been unable to corner and slay the beast myself. Now, if you could channel your violence against this devourer, as Finn calls it, we'd be indebted to you.
Amazing. So we got our first quest, and from here we can see the rewards that we're going to get. An uncut support gem and some gold. We'll accept this quest, say goodbye to Renly, and move on.
His burden is heavy.
So we got to our first town, and I'm just going to explain a little bit about what we can do in town, some of the things that we can interact with, like the well and the stash, and some of the NPCs such as Renly and Una and Finn. And then after that, I think we could call the video here. So for example, first things first, if ever we're running low on our life and mana flask, or our health and mana in general, we can head over to the well and click on it, and that will refill everything, including our health, mana, and all of our flasks. Next is our stash, and if you open up here, you should see these 4 for stash. Don't worry about the rest. This is microtransactions that I've paid for. But I won't be using them in this playthrough, just to keep things as vanilla as possible. So we're going to go ahead and maybe just put some of these items in there. One thing to note about the stash is that it is shared across your characters, so long as they are in the same league. So if I have 2 or more characters in Fate of the Val, they all share the same stash tab. So this is a good way to transfer and share items between your characters via your stash, right? I'm just going to take them out for now. We'll start with Renly first. Here we could buy martial weapons, so maces, crossbow, bow, staff, armor, shields, helmets, gloves and boots, as well as belts. These are all the things that we can equip on our character. So all of these major slots here, right? It's a good idea to check on your vendors every time you level up. You don't have to do this if you're not in solo self-found, but for solo self-found, it's a good way to find good items, and I'll go over like what makes a good item later in another episode. But yeah, because the shop refresh every time we level up.
Till next time.
And then for flask, jewelry like rings and amulets,
I fear this land.
we can talk to Una.
I like to hold on to bits and pieces.
She will give us
Catch your eye.
scepter, okai, staves, wands, things that are more spell casting oriented, and sometimes at higher levels we'll also see rings and amulets here. We'll close
Stay
that.
safe if you can.
And Finn.
Welcome, violent stranger. I am Finn, and I shall be your humble provider of useful and diverse objects that are most definitely not scrounged or stolen. If I don't got it, I can get it. You just let me know.
Alright, so we can also buy and sell things from Finn, and Finn buys and Finn sells items in all category, but the catch is that they're random. So we don't get to see exactly which item that we're getting from Finn. It's a bit of a gamble. This is also why we call them a gamble here. I don't currently have the gold for it, but if you do and you want to look for an upgrade, it's not a bad idea. Generally though, the items here are overpriced and it's difficult to get something actually worthwhile from here. So unless you're really in a pinch, I wouldn't recommend gambling at Finn.
See you.
Headstrong
And finally, the waypoint.
like me.
From here, we could see the world map, at least in Act 1. And you'll see that there's a couple of waypoints in these different areas here that we have not yet unlocked, so we can't go to them yet, and we'll have to walk there ourselves. I think we'll call it an episode here, and for the next episode, we'll go over support skill gem and head into the Clearfell and continue with our journey. So yeah, thanks for watching. Let me know if I missed anything or if there's any mechanics that are still confusing from the first area or in any of the explanation that I did, and I'll try to provide a Q&A at the beginning of the next episode.